Lisa from Been There, Got Out. And today's guest is a friend of ours. She's the founder of the Amicable Divorce Network, which you think would be really weird for us to be friends with someone who's the Amicable Divorce Network. But her name is, there she is, Tracy. And we met and immediately others who are able to put a fence around legal abuse, which is what our community deals with. So it's wonderful to meet other people who care about keeping their clients out of court. So hi, Tracy, and thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Good to see you again, Lisa. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. So we're going to talk today about child-centered divorce. But first of all, wouldn't any divorce be child-centered? I mean, isn't that what we all want for our children? Like, I would think that we're doing child-centered divorce. Can you talk about
Yeah, so absolutely. I think first and foremost, people love their children. But when you go through a divorce, people, they get very emotional, of course, that's understandable. And then they're no longer working as co-parents. Generally, they're thinking of what's best for them. They want this particular result. They want this particular parenting plan. And so what we like to do at the Amicable Divorce Network is to really focus people on what is best for the child to guide their decision making in those areas. And a lot of times when you point that out to somebody, like, look at it this way, it really helps to resolve what the issue is, because people get so ingrained on what they want as a parent or a person, that it's important to look at, well, what's best for the child. So January is Child-Centered Divorce Month, which is, everybody's always like, that's so weird. But it's because it is divorce month. People file most often in January. So we want to really catch people on the front end and give them this information on how to divorce better.
Yeah. So before you officially introduce yourself, do you think that people file in January the most because they've been through the holidays and they're like, I'm never doing this again?
Yeah, we see a real lag starting about Halloween time, where you see a lack of new cases, and then people all wait until today. I have 5 appointments today to meet with attorneys and get things started. So people are like, I just want to get through the holidays. I know that this is happening, but got to get through it. And so you see just a huge rush then in January, combined with there's some rumors out there that we'll lose no fault divorce, which is a whole other conversation. So some people that were on the fence are also sort of panic filing.
Yeah, wow. So Tracy, now can you officially tell people who you are?
My name is Tracy Moore-Grant, and that is a mouthful, and you don't have to remember all that. You can just go to the Amicable Divorce Network website and you'll find me there. I am a Georgia attorney, mediator, arbitrator, parent coordinator, guardian ad litem. I've been practicing, I got to think about it now, 23 years. Solely in the area of family law. My law firm is Patterson Moore Butler, and we are in Georgia, north of Atlanta. But I'm the founder of the Amicable Divorce Network. And we vet them for being resolution focused, which you want in a case. You don't want that person that's just going to file all those motions. You want somebody to work on a solution. Experienced in their field. These are not easy cases. They're just out of court cases. And engages in fair billing practices. So everybody's always afraid of what the professionals will charge in a divorce. And so our professionals have been vetted for not engaging in high billing practices. And so you can look for any type of professional in our database worldwide, anybody from a lawyer, a mediator, financial professional, realtor, coach, anybody at all. And if both parties agree to an amicable divorce, it's an actual out-of-court process that helps people resolve complicated issues outside of the court system. It's hosted on a technology platform, all sorts of things. So there's a lot going on. So we just always want people to know they have choices on how to divorce.
Right. And even though it's called amicable, it doesn't mean that your ex has to be amicable to do it.
Absolutely. Actually, the parties are never amicable. I mean, I can't say never. Sometimes I have a unicorn client. But for the most part, the professionals are vetted for being amicable. And people often say, well, I don't want an amicable professional. I want somebody who's going to fight for me. But you still are negotiating for the things that you want, but it's a very different process, cost, and timeline difference. If I can pick up the phone, talk to opposing counsel and say, your client dropped a line from the health insurance. Let's sort this out, and get that resolved in 10 minutes, as opposed to traditional litigation where somebody would file a motion, somebody has 30 days to respond, you get on a court calendar in 90 days, and then you go to court and argue about this. So it really is, efficient divorce network is probably like maybe what we should have named it, but
Yeah.
we went with Amicable Divorce Network and we're here now.
You know what's interesting is when you talk about how you can, if you friendly or professionals who work together professionally can talk to each other, that that's a good thing. I know we
Yeah.
just had a call yesterday from someone who was like, I think my attorney is like colluding with opposing counsel's attorney because I saw them talking together in the hallway. And it was very hard to get the message across that that might actually be helpful,
Yeah.
because it's not like they're colluding to figure out how much money they can milk you both of, but like they can talk and get it done, rather than attorneys that fight. That ends up costing everyone a lot more money.
Yeah. To have an attorney project your anger into the court system is the most expensive form of communication out there. And so when you have a professional that says, let me quickly solve this issue for you, let me talk to them and we'll reach a resolution. I mean, it's a very easy comparison. 10-minute conversation, hourly rate, let's say $300 an hour. So they had a 10-minute conversation, you spent $60 to get it resolved, versus motion takes an hour. Talking to the client takes an hour, arguing with opposing counsel, going to court can take 10 hours on that issue. So it is normal that attorneys do have conversations with one another and that they have a decent relationship with one another. It is actually concerning when you have the attorney that nobody wants to talk to. Because that means they are actually a high conflict professional that nobody wants to deal with. And they are the ones who run up the highest bills. So sometimes in court, all the attorneys are there for a motions day, and you'll see they're all talking, catching up with one another. And you'll see a couple of attorneys who aren't talking to anybody. They're the problem children, frankly, because nobody wants to deal with them, because they are the high conflict person in this divorce equation. And so having a friendly relationship with your colleagues means you're a normal person. So, and you want to hire a normal person. You don't want to hire the professional with the personality disorder. You probably have enough challenges at this point.
Right. And I wish we could get it out. We will just keep repeating it, getting out of people's heads that it is not good to hire a pit bull attorney, especially for our clients who are all dealing with like super high conflict domestic violence cases. Like, we understand you want someone to advocate for you, but there's ways to do it that are not aggressive. Because I remember, Tracy, our conversation like a year ago, it's like lighting your money on fire.
It is. It absolutely is. I mean, the reason that we vet our professionals for being experienced is because they know how to resolve high conflict issues like domestic violence. They both know, let's put this safety plan in place. We don't need the judge to give us that result. We've been through these cases. We know that this is the proper result. Let's agree upon it. And it has the same effect, a consent order or an order from the judge. They're both orders. It's the path on how you get there. So when you use a experienced professional that's like, this is the likely result, let's work on this, let's get this handled quickly and efficiently, the client has more money to spend on things that are more productive: therapy, moving costs, starting over money, maybe a vacation, whatever it is, as opposed to legal fees, which, I'm speaking against my own interest. I'm a lawyer that makes money 6 minutes at a time, and I always am trying to educate people, like, don't give it to me. Let's figure out a better way to make this situation better for you. And so I think that's important for people to understand.
Yeah. And as you say that, because we are going to be talking more about the child-centric divorce, is we've heard attorneys make the comment, or I have, like, you can either pay for your child's college education or mine.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So tell us more about child-centered divorce. Like most people are already assuming I'm focused on my kids, but you're saying in the heat of the moment
Mhm.
and months and sometimes years afterward, they're not. It's more about themselves, and often they probably don't even realize that because they
Yeah.
want to be focused on their kids. But this, we know divorce and post-judgment issues can consume a person's life.
Absolutely. So when I start a case with somebody, I always try to identify what their values are. And if they have children, I reflect with them and say, do you want to have a child-centered divorce? And sometimes we go back to that throughout the case and to say, you told me you wanted a child-centered divorce. Let me tell you how these decisions are now different. And so the first thing is for people to understand there's this idea that divorce inherently hurts children, that the fact that there is a divorce at all is going to psychologically harm the children, and that just isn't true. What harms children is conflict. And so whether that is parties staying in a marriage where they're fighting and the children's laying in bed, putting a pillow over their head, trying to not hear this fighting, or they are fighting in front of the child or on the phone during the divorce process, that is what's harmful to the children. And so first and foremost, if you have a conflict with your co-parent, don't fight in front of the kids. And they have the absolute best hearing on the planet. You could say something about a chocolate chip cookie, and I promise you, they will hear it 2 floors away and down the hallway with headphones on. And so, go outside. So they hear a lot. So if you have to have a phone conversation or you are having a heated conversation with your co-parent, I always say go to the mailbox, go down the road, and the kids, are need to be insulated from that because they will hear it. And then a second part of that is not allowing third parties to badmouth the co-parent. A lot of people, maybe there's a family event, and somebody will start railing on your spouse. Oh, I can't believe that they did this. And the kid is right there. And so you need to say, oh, we'll talk about that later. Little Susie is here, step away, because a lot of people, well, I didn't say it. They said it, Aunt Betty said it. I didn't say it, but it's just as harmful for them to hear those things. So keep those conversations private and do ask for the respect of third parties around the children.
Yeah, when you say that, I'm thinking I just recently did an interview with a woman named Katie from the Single Mama Club who's over in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And she talked about how she took a parenting class. She and her ex had it. And of course, in her mind, she's thinking, well, I'm not the problem one.
Yeah.
But she realized that she was doing what's called passive
Yeah.
alienating behaviors without realizing it. And she's done a number of videos on the topic. And one of the examples that she gave is being at a party and talking to someone else and like talking about the other parent, and the child is within earshot. She said the exact same thing, is like, you can't do it
Mm-hmm.
because even your body
Yeah.
language show the kids know what you're talking about. They can
Exactly.
see what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And, we think about ways that parents often undermine, sometimes unconsciously, the relationship with the other parent. And your body language can send poisonous messages about the other parent.
Absolutely.
So I love your line about, go to the mailbox, like get out of there.
And hopefully your mailbox isn't attached to your front door like old-fashioned times. So we have a question in the chat. Are all of the people that work for the network attorneys? So first of all, nobody works for the network. We're not an employer of people. We vet professionals, and they're not all lawyers.
Right.
We have major categories, which are legal, which are lawyers, including paralegals, ADR professionals, mediator, arbitrator, parent coordinator, mental health professionals, coaches, financial professionals, and a real estate and mortgage professionals. So anybody that helps people before, during, and after divorce is welcome to be vetted by our organization, take our trainings, and be a member. We even have a interior designer who helps people unspouse their house. So there's just a lot of really interesting and creative people out there that are just, ready to help.
Yes, and we're part of the Amicable Divorce Network, and we are not attorneys, even though people often ask if we are. We're not. And just to clarify, when you said ADR, that stands for alternate dispute resolution.
So those are methods of resolving your case yourself with a professional, where a judge is not handing you the result. You're going through an alternative guided process.
Right. And which we think is almost always, or pretty much always, better if possible. And there's a lot of ways to try to make that possible, even if your ex is a narcissist.
Yes, we give our professionals special training in this, and we'll be doing even a whole day of training this year. I have dealt with narcissists in amicable cases. Of course, they always make things difficult, but experienced professionals know how to navigate those personalities and still guide the case to a resolution. So that's important to know. You don't want to give them the court system to wreak havoc in, because that's the most expensive forum for their behavior. If you can get those cases handled outside of court, let them think it's their idea, professionals that know how to deal with this, you can reach an efficient result with a narcissist.
Yeah. And I love how you say at the beginning, you said a few minutes ago, how when you first meet with a client, you kind of go over their values and you kind of anchor them into like, yes, we want to be child-centered through this divorce. And so if we can stick to that agreement, like everyone wants to be child-centered. Like who would say, I don't care about my kids?
Exactly. And so
no one would, even if they don't feel that way, they're not going to say it. So once it's said, then it's sort of like, well, these are the choices that we have to make. Have you heard of the term positive and negative advocates? Because I'm thinking that people who work for Amicable Divorce Network are positive advocates.
Tell me a little bit more about it, because I agree. I think I know where you're going with it, but explain it to everybody.
Okay, so I think it comes from Bill Eddy, who's
a genius.
Yeah. Yeah, like founder of the High Conflict Institute, family lawyer, former social worker, but his whole thing is about conflict resolution or lowering the conflict. And he talks about how often negative advocates are people who sort of fan the flames of the conflict, and they can be people that love you and love your children, family members, close friends, because they'll be like, well, you should have this, like you're entitled to this. And they kind of be like, fight for your kid, fight for this. And there's a lot of professionals out there who are also negative advocates and make a lot of money doing so, which is harmful to you and especially your children, and you might not realize it. Positive advocates aren't necessarily going to say fight, 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 and they're probably not going to be the bulldog type, but they're going to be the ones who are like what you're saying, like, what do we care about? How can we achieve that? And how can we get you all through this as healthy and unscathed as possible? Because, Chris and I often have to work with our clients. We give them what we call the harsh New York reality check, is like, even though you don't like what I'm saying, like, this is how it's going to help you and your child.
Yeah.
And we just were talking to someone yesterday where, there's been a lot of conflict. We're doing we call it image rehabilitation, because the person was very angry and aggressive and made a poor impression. And so now we're trying to turn it around, and it's very, very hard because people think in their heads, like, if I care about my kids, I have to show how upset I am and angry I am. Otherwise, like, I'm not a good enough parent. But that's not true, right?
No, it really isn't. I think work on yourself, and having that level of anger, really doesn't benefit anybody. But when you really project that into a legal process, you're really just running up fees. And so the best way to contain that and to handle it is through, therapy and talking to somebody and having a coach help you organize your thoughts. Because when you send these emails to these attorneys and say, do this, do this, do this, you're paying for their time and then their actions. And the court is not a system where you can receive emotional justice. They got laws, they got rules, they want the facts, they're going to apply the facts, you're going to go on your way. So having an opportunity to really tell this story a lot of times just doesn't happen. And people are very disappointed. They've paid $50,000 to have this trial. And it's very much like, give me the balance sheet, show me the amount of the account, tell me this fact. It really isn't this sort of drama situation that you see on television. And so when I have a case and, people have said they want to be child focused, a lot of times we're sitting in mediation and I have to reflect back on that and say, we talked about this, so let's talk about what that means right now. And one of the issues that I see all the time is parenting plans and holidays. And so parties will say, here's a classic example I hear all the time. I love Halloween. I'm passionate about Halloween. I loved Halloween growing up. My house is so spooky. And so I want to make sure that Halloween is in our parenting plan. Well, that's great, but that's actually coming from the parent. The parent enjoys Halloween. The parent needs the Halloween. The child may not care at all about Halloween. I have stepchildren, and interestingly, my stepson was asking this past Halloween why, he doesn't have to have Halloween in his parenting plan because his friend does, and so they do a lot of comparisons. And that friend was upset because it was one parent's year for Halloween, and he was having to drive 45 minutes away to trick or treat and in a neighborhood he's not familiar with, and then his dad would have to drive him to school the next morning, and so he was going to have to get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning to get there on time. And so parents need to think about that. What is the experience like for the child? Because you're really making Halloween a lot less fun when you're spending that amount of time in the car, and then this is what their experience is. You're making that decision about yourself, your memories, your love of Halloween. Same thing with, a big holiday like Christmas. A lot of people switch in the middle of the day. That
Mhm.
means a child's in a car. That means they're leaving their new toys and gifts behind. So think about their experience. Would you have wanted that as a child, to have to leave at this time of day and get in a car and go over here and do this? No. So how can you create the best experience for them? Think about it from their point of view.
Yeah, as you're saying the thing about the Halloween, I think about how Chris and his ex battled over Halloween and spent I don't know how many thousands of dollars, and it only lasted a couple of years
Yeah.
when the kids trick or treated anyway, and it was like a total
Yeah.
waste.
And kids get to a certain age and they're too cool to put on the costume
Yeah.
and do it anyway. And there's so many events, before and after Halloween, that you can do lots of fun events without having the day itself, which often falls on a school day. So it very rarely is a, beautiful Saturday that you're getting to go trick or treating. So you really have to think about that as well when you're making decisions, and ask, whoever is guiding you, legal professional, and say, what is the likely end result, and how much is it going to cost me to perhaps get my results? And so when you can say, you know what, it's 50-50 on whether the judge is going to give you Halloween, it's going to cost you about $8,000.
Mhm.
Is that how you want to spend your money? I mean, I don't. I'd rather be at the beach, but people make those decisions all the time. But really think about that and ask those questions. I get very rarely asked by somebody, how much is this going to cost? Is this a likely great argument for me? And things like that. And those are actually the questions that people should be asking.
Yeah, actually, you're reminding me also of this person that we spoke to recently who was saying, I want my lawyer to file for full custody, and he told me it's going to cost me $15,000, and I'm probably not going to get it anyway, and I think he's just biased. And I was like, I don't think so.
Well,
I
yeah, I
think
mean,
he's
why would
being
somebody give
brutally
you that
honest with you.
advice? They're the ones getting the $15,000, right? So,
Yeah,
I would be more suspicious of any professional that guarantees you results,
right.
that says, yes, oh, this is absolutely going to happen to you. Because when you hand decision making off to a judge, it is out of your hands. And a lot of times a case doesn't have a consistent judge coming out. So even if your legal professional says, oh, judge so and so always rules this way, you're absolutely going to get this, this is guaranteed, that may not be the judge that comes out. I've had that happen tons of times. That judge got sick, so they called in somebody else to make this decision. So I had a situation I talk about all the time where I had said to my client about addiction issues that the judge always does this, we're good. And the judge came out and said, I always do things this way. And I'm like, but I watched 60 Minutes yesterday and I heard about this and that, and I'd like to try something new here. And it was a disaster in the end. It didn't work for these parties, but that was the court order.
Yeah,
And that's what we were stuck with. As many times as I could say, 100 times the judge has done this, the judge was like, influenced by something else. And so when you settle your case yourself, you're in control. You
right.
know, you get to pick that. You get to take time and care with what that decision looks like. And when you hand it off to a judge, a lot of times they just don't have the time for all of the detail, and give sort of a routine result. They actually pull a notebook of parenting plans down and they just pick one for you. So
I know. And
it's,
those are always the ones that people end up back in court
mhm,
because they're so vague and
yeah.
the language isn't tight.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a problem. And so just sort of going back, because I know a lot of times people are filing in January, just the third tip for today about how to have a child-centered divorce is to tell the children about your divorce together,
Mhm.
have that same message. Something that people do that's really hurtful for kids is the person that maybe is more hurt by the divorce runs out and tells the children and tells their story and tells what the other person did. And this is happening because she did this and all of that. And that is actually really harmful for kids. So what you need to do is adult up. You need to both sit down with the children in a very calm manner, say that, yes, this divorce is happening, but it is not your fault as a child. You did absolutely nothing wrong. You are loved, and we are a united front. It's when the kids feel, two parents sort of are like this, right? And you can hold the child in the little basket, so to speak. And so when kids feel loved and supported, they feel good. Even if the parents don't live together, there's still a co-parenting unit. It's when you have this that the children fall through the cracks. And so it's really important to show that united front through the divorce and after, because when kids think as well they can get away with something over here because the parents don't talk, is also where you start to have some future behavioral issues. So that's a whole other conversation. But tell the kids, make sure they know it's not their fault. Everything is very calm. They are loved and supported.
Okay, so Tracy, I'm thinking about my own experience and that of a lot of people in our audience who are sometimes not working with someone who is child-centered. I know in my own case, I was like, let's tell the kids together, and he wanted to
Mm-hmm.
avoid the conversation. And then I caught him, at the house once, and I was like, let's tell them now.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it still blew up.
Yeah.
Any advice for someone whose ex is not on the same page or possibly in their right
Yeah.
mind or has addiction
Sure.
issues, and you say like, let's work together, and
Mhm.
they are unable to.
Yeah. So if that is your situation, it sounds like there's a lot of things going on that could impact the children, whether it's one party's anger, mental health, behavioral issues. And so if that's your situation, the children need to be in therapy.
Mhm.
And you probably need to be in therapy to get through this time. Even the healthiest of co-parents during this transition time, I say have the children in therapy, a touch point, somebody that's checking in on them. So in that situation, hopefully there is a therapeutic intervention that person can help guide that conversation, and with you present. And you can always invite the other person to be there. Maybe they don't want to be, maybe they can't get in control of their emotions. So always try, but you can't control what other people do, and that's something else to learn throughout your divorce. You can only control 50% of your divorce. So if the other person won't get on board with this, do your best, which is to approach it in that way and say, even if, for example, dad isn't sitting here, he loves you. We're on the same page about this. And if it's the school year, make sure you reach out to the school counselor, let them know what's going on. Say, just keep a couple of extra eyes on little Johnny right now. This is what's going on. And they usually do a great job of that, having
Yeah.
some, come and check in with me. Let's have a chat, and stuff like that, just so you have another set of eyes on your child.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good to have several sets of eyes on your child during
Mm-hmm.
these difficult transitions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The more people that are there to help is great. The more positive advocates you have, the better.
Yeah. By the way, that makes me think of something another lawyer recently told me. He said that it's important for kids in situations like these to be involved with activities like school activities and sports or whatever, because I know in my mind when I was dealing with all this,
Mm-hmm.
I think I was projecting my own how it was consuming me and thinking my kids were living the same experience. And I
Mm-hmm.
was worried about them all. But a lot of, I mean, they were teenagers at the time. They were just doing their
Right.
thing. Like they weren't
Mm-hmm.
as worried as I
Yeah.
was about it.
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
think part of that was because they were
Mm-hmm.
doing they were kids. They were living their life and involved with school and their events.
Yeah.
And they also were able to meet mentors and other adults that they could
Mm-hmm.
talk to
Yeah.
when I was consumed with my own stuff.
Yeah. I mean, think about when you're going through your divorce and you're in your own home. You may be triggered by things in your home. There may be conflict in the home, memories in this home. It's sort of the same for children. So the more you can take them out of that ecosystem, give them positive other things that they're focusing on, a sports team, a new lesson, something like that, that is just sort of like maybe you as a person might go to your exercise class, you're going to yoga, that's your hour. They have the same, and
Mhm.
so they build an identity, and sort of the other benefit of that is that it's also a sort of passive way for the other parent to participate with the children. And so they can come watch the game. You guys don't have to interact, you don't have to sit together or anything like that, but both have the opportunity to take advantage of that time seeing and supporting the child. So it's also just another opportunity there where people can step up if they want to.
Yeah, yeah, great. All right, so any other tips with child-centered divorce, or if not, how can people find you, Tracy?
So my final tip is just to reflect on what I would say is my top tip, which is to really look at your decision making as you are the child. What does this holiday look like for the child? What does the school schedule, look like? What type of things? How does this help the child? So really put yourself in their shoes when you go through your decision making. Anybody who wants to reach me or any of our Amicable Divorce Network professionals around the world, we're in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom, you can go to amicableddivorcenetwork.com and look in our membership directory for somebody near you. And on March 25th, we will be launching our book, which is Divorce Amicably, How to Save Your Time, Money, and Sanity Through Divorce. And this is a collection of tons of great resources from our team of professionals. So I always tell everybody, consider amicable divorce first and see if it's a good fit for you, because you could save a lot of time, conflict, and money. So I hope people will look into it.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Tracy. It was great to see you again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for all you do for everybody as well. It's really great.
All right. Talk later. Bye.